Hello, and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Kiefer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful guest with me today. He is an artist as well as the co-host of the One Piece podcast, a weekly podcast discussing and dissecting the anime and manga series One Piece. It's Alex Kazanas. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Pretty well.
It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about a game that we will get to shortly. But before we talk about video games at all, for the people who don't have the pleasure of knowing you, please introduce yourself. What do you do, and what do you like?
I'm Alex. I do art on the side, but I'm a graphic designer for my day job. It's great work. I love it. You know, I do all sorts of other crazy crap on the side. I take my artistry with me on stage. Sometimes I do a thing called Super Art Fight, which is sort of Pictionary meets pro wrestling. We do bar shows, anime conventions, stuff like that. Essentially, it's two people drawing at each other on canvas while two people are commentating in the background. It's pretty rad. I big time film nerd. Love movies a lot, and I also love One Piece, which for the uninitiated, it's the longest running manga series in Japan, and it's just now starting to sort of take off in the United States. So we at the podcast sort of have our work cut out for us lately.
Nice. So you can say that you graphic design is your passion, but One Piece is your calling. What appeals to you about One Piece? You've done a podcast on it for about 15 years. What was it that drew you to this series?
I do love anime. I love manga. As a teen, I was super into Dragon Ball, and I think that liking One Piece was a natural progression from Dragon Ball, considering that they're both in the Shonen Jump magazine. The author Eiichiro Oda sort of cut his teeth on Dragon Ball, inspired him a lot. But for me, One Piece sort of it transcends other shonen battle manga in that first and foremost, it's an adventure comic concentrating on mysteries and world building and character development rather than who can do big punchies. I mean, it does do big punchies, and when it does, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But not really the point of the comic altogether. It's all about world building, and what was supposed to be initially a 5-year series has now ballooned into a 25 year plus juggernaut, just because the story just sort of got away from the author and just keeps putting stuff in that he likes. And I don't know, it's the one thing that hasn't disappointed me. Being a Star Wars fan my entire life, eventually you get disappointed by something.
No, I totally get it. I've watched back when it was, on 4Kids, however many years ago, Jesus Christ. I watched a lot of it then, and then when it aired on Toonami again about 10 years later, I watched a bit of it there. So I'm pretty familiar with up to maybe about episode 100-ish, around when Tony Chopper's folded in, and that's a whole thing. And then there's Nico Robin comes in after that, I think.
Yep. Yeah,
so
she comes in around then, yeah.
That stuff then.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the 4Kids dub on our One Piece podcast Patreon. Me and my co-host Steve Yurko, we watched all of the 4Kids dub of One Piece over the course of 2 years, and we did a separate podcast about it. And now Steve does a separate podcast about 4Kids. He talks to his co-host on that show. It's called 4Kids Flashback. Is a voice actor from 4Kids, and they interview people who worked on shows, like the president of 4Kids, localization folks. It's a really crazy deep dive that sort of started with what we did for One Piece, which is nuts. I'm talking too much about a podcast that isn't my own, but it's near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. No, I get it. I talk about other podcasts all the time. Beauty of being in a network with so many talented people.
Mm-hmm.
But let's move away from the anime and localization and dubbing talk for a second and talk about this podcast's subject, video games. As you know, Alex, no community likes to gatekeep more than the gamers. I know you work in anime and manga. I know that is a big... I'm sure you were forged in the fires of gatekeeping. But we need to talk about your gaming history now. Let's turn it around back on you. Who or what got you into video games? What's been your relationship with it throughout the years, and so on and so forth? What is Alex's portrait of a gamer?
Oh, man. So I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 85, so I guess, the latter half of the 80s. But my aunt and uncle would watch, I would go over to my aunt and uncle's house every weekend. And my uncle bought a Nintendo Entertainment System. He bought it for himself, but he used me as an excuse to buy it. So I kind of cut my teeth playing Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Bubble Bobble, Donkey Kong Classic, Zelda 2, and whatever you could rent at the time. So I never, not having owned an NES, this was this was sort of like how I got into video games.
Mm.
I can't tell you what it was. I think it was just, you could play a cartoon. I guess
Mhm.
that's sort of in my head. I think that like even now, the best video games to me are the ones that like are sort of they're sort of seamless in terms of being able to. Well, video games are a cinematic experience, right? So it's sort of like you're controlling a movie in a sense, in a certain way. But that's all that's all another thing. I think over the course of those couple years, my mom was very adamant that I cannot have a video game system at all. It rots your brain. It'll mess up your eyes. She caved in and got me a Game Boy one year, and I had a lot of fun with that until Christmas 1992. I'll never forget this. I got a Super Nintendo for my grandmother. My parents weren't too happy about it, but it was such a great God, it was such a great time being able to see these at the time like super high def graphics on a TV for the first time, and it was just I don't know, it just lit up my life. I ended up getting Mario Paint and Home Alone 1 and 2, which are not good games by any stretch of the imagination, but Mario Paint, I think like the mouse came broken, so took it back, exchanged it
Mm.
for Super Mario World, and that sort of was the beginning, the real beginning, I think, for me.
So Super Mario World's kind of like your formative like gaming text in terms of like, oh no, this is forever now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not to get too far ahead, but Mario World, I think, is one of the greatest platformers of all time. Just easy.
I 100% agree with you there. I was born in '96, but when I got a Game Boy Advance when I was about 6 years old, I think like that I got Super Mario Advance, which was Super Mario World,
Hmm.
and it was like the same thing. It was like, whoa, hang on, this rips.
Yeah.
Holds up tremendously every time I go back and revisit it.
No, totally.
Now, obviously the Super Nintendo was this big console that really got you into gaming. Would you say that that's your favorite console?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like bar none. I can't think of like all of my favorite games, save for a few, are on the SNES. I carry so many memories playing it with my friends. Obviously I got outside a bit, but it's just fun playing video games with your friends.
Hmm.
I I have a lot of really really great memories just playing video games, and Super Nintendo being sort of the arbiter for that. I think that the Nintendo Switch is probably a really close second because of what you can play on it and that you can take it with you. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be able to take my favorite games with me wherever I went. And when the Game Boy Advance came out, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is basically a tiny Super Nintendo you can fit in your pocket. And Mario World being one of the launch titles for it was definitely no, it wasn't a launch title, but it came out a little bit after its launch. Yeah, Mario World and F-Zero, like sort of in my head, I'm like, okay, this is going to pave the way for me being able to take like Final Fantasy VI, Earthbound, Mario RPG, like put them in my pocket, take them with me on vacation. And uh, unless you're in Japan, we didn't get we didn't get Earthbound. Mario RPG never got a GBA port, and Final Fantasy VI eventually got a really really great port. But I think the Switch is now for me that exact thing that I wanted as a kid. So I basically hold on to nostalgia. I think that's my problem. I
Sure.
like I have the Super Nintendo on this gigantic pedestal, and I can't. I need to just have it here with me at all times.
Sure. So you're playing games like Final Fantasy 3 and Earthbound kind of live as they were coming out. Am I understanding that?
Final Fantasy 3, I watched my friend play for a bit. That one I didn't actually play until the PlayStation port, which is not the optimal way to play it. But when you're a kid and you got to wait for loading times, I don't think you mind as much. But Earthbound was like I'll just get it out of the way. Earthbound's my favorite game of all time.
Yeah.
I rented it like 3 or 4 times before actually getting it, and that's the game that kind of rocked my world. I did not know what an RPG was until EarthBound. Really, my friend was playing Final Fantasy, but I didn't know like what kind of game that was.
Sure. Like it was a menu game. It was a game where you press buttons on a screen, but like this is a language. Like EarthBound is like an American version of it where it's like set in a modern day, and I can definitely see why that would be so impactful on somebody because there was no game like that. And obviously so many things have come out since then that have been trying to imitate that in some way, but I talked about this in the EarthBound episode I did. It's the Brian Eno effect. It's the Velvet Underground effect. It wasn't huge at the time, but everybody who did play it was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It was the first video game that I can ever remember where I could put myself in the protagonist's shoes, rather than like, oh, I get to be a guy with a sword. No, I'm just a kid with a bat, and I fish hamburgers out of the trash can, like just like in real life.
Just like in real life.
Yeah. Which is, it's super funny. I don't know if you brought this up on the EarthBound episode or not, but the funniest thing to me about like food items in EarthBound are how expensive they were, but now, like because of inflation, like I'm like, okay, yeah, $6 for a cookie, that seems right. $10 burger, yeah, that's that. I wish I could get a burger for $10. Like that's sort of where I'm at.
We didn't talk about this in the EarthBound episode, but I went to see Mitski at an out of town show in Durham, North Carolina, and I was staying at a hotel, and I like to have the TV on when I stay at a hotel because it makes it feel more lived in, right?
Yeah.
So we're watching Pulp Fiction in the hotel room, and they talk about the $5 milkshake, and like John Travolta's offended by the idea of a milkshake costing $5, and I'm just sitting there like, $5 is the price of a milkshake now. That's yeah. Uh-oh.
Yeah, John Travolta, you must be rolling over in your grave.
Yeah, the totally dead John Travolta is. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what Scientology does to somebody.
Who's to say? Last scene hanging out with the cast of Scrubs, as I understand it. So, probably emotionally dead. Who's to say? I don't know. I don't make judgments.
Yeah.
Anyway, EarthBound, great game. $6 cookies. It is a very good commentary on America. We'll say that, prescient in some ways that it could never have anticipated.
100%. Yeah. Kudos to Itoe-san for his biting satire.
Yeah. Absurdism that just becomes the reality. So at some point, life begins to imitate the art.
Mm-hmm.
So, RPGs, big thing. What stuff did you start to play like post, EarthBound SNES? What was the stuff between? You talked about the Game Boy Advance and the Switch. Was there anything between those two eras?
Plenty, yeah. So I never had a Sega Genesis, but my friend did. So I played, Sonic and Sonic 3 and all the Sonic games at some point. But a buddy of mine had Shining Force 2. And he would come over to my house and like we would play EarthBound together, aka he would watch me play and, chime in every once in a while. And I would go over to his house and play Shining Force 2. And there's something about, I don't know if you can relate to this, but there's something about playing a single player RPG with somebody else in the room. It's something that I've done again in the last couple of years, and it's sort of fun to just sort of like, I don't know, riff as to what's happening or trying to figure it out as a duo or a trio as to like how to move forward in the game or not. But either way, yeah, Shining Force 2 for Sega Genesis was a big one for me. As I mentioned before, Final Fantasy 6. Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger I never had on the Super Nintendo by virtue of the fact that I didn't get into RPGs until towards the end of the SNES's life cycle. So
right.
Yeah. So that was PlayStation stuff.
God, the load time for Chrono Trigger, but the cutscenes.
Yeah, well, the cutscenes really, really dope.
Yeah.
I gotta say, yeah. So I was a Nintendo kid for basically my entire life. I didn't get any other console except for when Final Fantasy VII came out. I needed a PlayStation. Then I became Nintendo and Sony hand in hand, moving forward, 1,000 Points of Light, yada yada. So by the time the PS2 came around, Katamari Damacy and Snake Eater, like those are games that really hold a special place in my heart. Katamari for its extremely God, it's so weird. What a weird wild game, but also just, I don't know, like I had never played a game like that before in my entire life. And sometimes you watch a movie where there's been a couple times where I've watched a movie and it sort of like ticks this thing in my head where like, oh wow, movies can be like this. I think like The Matrix was one of those for me.
Right.
Pulp Fiction, the aforementioned Pulp Fiction. Fury Road, another one of those.
Yeah.
But Katamari was definitely one of those for me where like it's such a simple concept, but like how has nobody done this before?
Yeah, especially with the way like it works with the in tandem with the joysticks to
Yeah.
control and move the ball. I tried playing it on the Switch when it came out there, and I was like, because I remember playing the demo on like a PlayStation 2 demo disc, and it felt intuitive.
Yeah.
And then coming back to it as an adult, owning the game on the Switch, I was like, hang on, this is interesting. And I figured it out. I figured out why after the fact, and I got used to it. But it is definitely like I don't know. It's like bringing a sort of like artistry. Like it's playing a cartoon, like almost like EarthBound. It's like sort of bridging the gap by making it super. What's that Japanese director like Masaki Yuasa, the guy who did like Night is Short, Walk On Girl.
Oh my god, I love Yuasa.
Yeah, like something to that end where it's like almost abstract but with familiar images.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 3, you've covered on this podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but it's one of the only games that I've played through and like 100%ed multiple times. I love Metal Gear, but Snake Eater just really hits this amazing amazing balance of what that game series could be.
Oh yeah.
And I'll also throw Smash Brothers in there too, because I was such a Nintendo kid, and Smash Brothers is basically a Nintendo museum. I love every iteration of Smash Brothers to death. Like just absolutely my jam.
Yeah, I was a GameCube kid growing up. We had the PlayStation 2 also, but my older brother would play more teen-rated games on there. And my Christian family, like my mom, took the ESRB as text of like if you're a teenager, you're not a teenager, you can't play this game, that kind of thing. But like it's interesting you mentioned the whole like watching somebody play an RPG, because I did do a lot of that. I did watch my brother play these games regardless. I just didn't play a lot of them. So it's stuff like Skies of Arcadia and what else? Tales of Symphonia, things like that came out on the GameCube. And yeah, Super Smash Bros. Melee was another one where it's like, this is rated teen, but boy, I can sit here and watch it. And eventually I just got it on the GameCube at my dad's house and played it there. It was fine, but like I spent so much time just watching somebody else play Smash Bros. Melee.
The GameCube is like, what a perfect console. I really love the GameCube a whole lot. It was the first console that I ever bought, like with my own money. The N64 I ended up getting like the year it came out for Christmas, which was a huge deal at the time. I guess you were maybe like a little tiny guy.
I was born in 1996.
Yeah. So, but at that time it was pandemonium. I remember that commercial with the kid who opened up the N64 and freaked out.
Yeah.
And I got really fucking pissed. Oh, can I swear?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah, I got really fucking pissed because my parents would have they would always have the video camera when I was opening gifts. And the year I got the N64, I ran laps. I did jazz hands. It was awesome. It's like a video that me and my friends watch like every once in a while because it's super funny. And then when I saw the commercial, I was really mad. I'm like, that could have been me. I could have been internet famous.
Oh man. Someone got there first.
They did. That's okay.
It's okay.
I know. I saw them on Tosh.0. I think I'm doing a little better.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, let's go to the present now. Where are they now? What have you been playing lately? Anything that you're looking forward to playing? And as 2023 was such a booked year, people are still catching up on their backlog.
Man, 2023 was a great year for everything. Movies, video games. So I played Pikmin 4 for the first time last summer. Or just any Pikmin game. Like it was the first of any Pikmin game I ever played. And it like really drew me in, really hooked me. I can't believe that I've never played Pikmin before. That was a real eye opener for me. And it's cool to be able to feel that about video games now, like when I'm, close to being 40. Like it's exciting. What else did I play? I played Return of the Obra Dinn, which is a crazy awesome game. I think I beat that in like 2 sittings. I love like a point and click adventure type thing. But lately, so I bought a PS5 a few months ago, so I'm playing a little catch up. Spider-Man 2, I completely annihilated that game. Let's see, a buddy of mine lent me Elden Ring, so I'm slowly trying to do what I can. I'm not, I don't have much experience with Souls-like games, so it's a little daunting, especially after like playing something like Tears of the Kingdom, where it's sort of open world for babies, I guess. If
I don't know. I mean, like
I wouldn't call it for babies. I mean, I'm not going to say it's for babies. I'm just saying it's relatively less punishing. I guess that's the
yeah, a
better term.
different relationship with space, I guess. There's certainly like a I feel like God element of Tears of the Kingdom that you eventually reach, whereas Elden Ring, it's always putting you in your place.
Yeah, I can't get a break in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I played Snatcher for the first time pretty recently.
Oh,
And I'm anxious to get back to playing that once I finish a whole bunch of other crap coming down the pipeline. I am addicted to Slay the Spire. Have you played Slay the Spire?
it's one of those things. Where it's like I know I'm going to love this. I have it downloaded on the PlayStation. As soon as I press play, it's going to be like me 6 episodes in a row. Me going, yeah, I forgot to play the game for this episode. Let's Slay the Spire though. Let's talk about that.
Oh man, it's I. A buddy of
I
mine
love
was
deck
like,
builders and I love roguelikes. I know I'm going to love it.
"Yeah, it's crazy, man." My friend, like, he sold me on it by like, "Here, look, watch me play through it," and he's put in like 1,000 hours into it, and I'm like, I can't believe you did that, and now I can. So and last but not least, I guess I've been playing Final Fantasy 7 remake Intergrade, so I can just catch up on stuff for Rebirth in another month or so, or in a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
I heard that the Yuffie stuff is sort of integral to, to finding out what's going on behind the scenes there. So I'm
Yeah.
just playing through the Yuffie story.
The video game equivalent of having to watch a season of television before getting to the next movie, I guess.
Yeah, it does feel a little like homework. But yeah.
No, obviously I'm all about Final Fantasy VII remake. I can't talk about it enough, and I will. I wanted to go back and do it all again before when we're recording this. Is the middle of February. By the time this is out, it's going to be March Madness, baby. But it's definitely like, oh man, but that's the file size, the storage of this game is like. Maybe we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll just do integrate. Maybe I'll just do integrate and then get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, you are one of the co-hosts of the One Piece podcast. Have you played any One Piece video games?
I've played almost all of them.
Almost all of them. Okay.
Almost all of them. Yeah. So there's a crap ton of One Piece video games dating back to, the PlayStation era. And that's sort of where I began with that. The Grand Battle series is sort of like a fighting game type series that they don't really do anymore. They did it for they did a couple for PlayStation, PS2, GameCube era. It sort of became a Power Stone type fighter, which
yes,
really really kicks ass.
Because I played Grand Adventure on the
Yes.
GameCube. My brother had that.
Yeah, Grand Adventure is a really weird one. It's it's a USA only game. They basically took assets from Grand Battle 3 and Grand Battle Rush, which those were my favorites. And they sort of made it into its own game where you go and you collect members for your crew, and you still have you still fight and stuff like that. But it's a sort of like a team builder type game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. By and large, most One Piece games are kind of bad. There's a really great one for the Game Boy Advance called Going Baseball, and it's like a baseball game, and it's just tiny. It's like a little pixely baseball game. It's really fun. That's one of the best ones. The ones that they've been kind of pumping out lately are the Pirate Warriors games, which are like a Dynasty Warriors Muso type thing, and those are pretty fun. If you've played one Muso game, you've played them all, I think. So if you like One Piece, then you're probably gonna like it. One Piece Odyssey came out pretty recently. That's a turn-based RPG.
That's like a Dragon Quest-ish type game, right?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous game. It looks phenomenal. I just can't get past a certain point because it's kind of a slog. It's a bit of a grind fest, and you sort of revisit the same areas over and over. So I lost interest pretty hard on it, which sucks because I really, really wanted to like it. Yeah, those, and I think I played a little bit of World Seeker, which is an open world style game, which I think One Piece would lend itself best to either like that Power Stone type fighter or an RPG, just because it's very much like, hey, let's go from One Piece is very much go from one place to the next, figuring out what's going on here, helping people and fighting guys.
Yeah,
it's like Yojimbo, but there's like a greater story at hand. I would like to play a really good One Piece RPG one day.
Yeah. RPGs are just like really a good format for the shonen thing in general, because the whole thing's about like power scaling and growing, and then like
Yeah.
big, big ultimate moves. You mentioned the Game Boy Advance one as like one that stood out to you, and it's like, obviously Bandai Namco's whole philosophy about putting out like licensed video games of popular shonen work, especially, is like, put it out. I don't give a shit how good it is. It says My Hero Academia on the box. That's what's selling really well. Put it out there. That kind of attitude, right?
Yeah, no, completely.
And it's like, I played dozens of. It's impossible. I'm not even dozens of years old, but I played dozens of Naruto video games growing up, and I played dozens of Dragon Ball Z and whatever video.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like, like you could argue some of it's shovelware, but there was also like sort of like a consistent, like on the Game Boy Advance especially, you had like, that's where a lot of the gems were, like a Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2.
Mhm.
There was a Dragon Ball side-scrolling game on the Game Boy
That
Advance.
game rules.
Yeah, Origins, I think it's called, or is that a
Yeah.
different one? Or is that the DS one?
I think was that the same one that was for the Wii? Because there's a really great side-scrolling Dragon Ball game for the Wii.
Yeah, Origins was the
Return of
name of
King
the
Piccolo.
DS one that was also on the Wii. Dragon Ball Advance.
Yes,
Advance
that's
Adventure.
the one.
Yes.
That one rocks. It's so good.
Rips so much. It's so good. I got that in Pokemon Emerald on my 9th birthday. Hell fucking yeah.
What a great birthday.
I know, right? And I loved them both. It was like, as a kid, like getting a Dragon Ball game especially was a gamble, because like stuff like Sagas or something like that would come out that was just like absolute fucking dog shit. It's like you had to like rent to figure out what the good video games based on anime were.
Mm-hmm.
But that one was just like, it hits. There was an Astro Boy Game Boy Advance game that was really good.
Oh my god, the Astro Boy game is like one of my every year I go to MagFest, and every year I look for the Astro Boy game. And I can just as easily, like, if I wanted to, emulate it, but I want an actual copy of that thing. I want to hold it in my hand.
And then this is going a bit further down, but like, I used to love Naruto. Not as into it now as an adult. I can see the seams, but I was all over it as a kid when it was airing on Toonami. And there was a really good Naruto RPG that was on the Nintendo DS. It was a turn-based RPG, really fucking good. There was 2 of them. I think it was called Path of the Ninja, Path of the Ninja 2. The first one was like all the way up to like the past the shooting exams, like right after it ends around the Gara arc. And then the second one was like non-canon side story stuff. Because like that was around the time in America when they were airing the Sasuke post-Sasuke retrieval arc. Everything was filler anyway. Let's make a filler video game. That's weird. But I played that a lot. There was also a DS Dragon Ball Z game that was based off the Sand arc called Attack of the Sands, also a turn-based RPG. Also really good. That's probably one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z games.
Oh wow. Yeah, there are a couple RPGs that they never the Dragon Ball RPGs that never came out in the States. For SNES. I do wonder if that's like a remake of that. There are a bunch of One Piece RPGs that I should probably mention. One of which is based on a filler arc, or I don't know which came first, the filler arc or the game. But none of these came out. Like there's a PlayStation one. None of these came out in the States, and nobody has patched them. So I'll probably never play them unless I one day learn Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
There is an RPG that came out called Romance Dawn, which sort of follows the series up until like the Marineford arc, and that came out on PSP, and then it got a DS port, and it's a fine game. It's just it could do with some improvement as far as turn-based RPGs goes.
Right, yeah. And there's a lot of those games that are like they're almost good. You know what I mean? Like if you just did a little more, like if this had another year in the oven or something like that.
Exactly.
But again, like the whole like we gotta, come on guys, let's do it. That attitude is just definitely like, you definitely see like the crunch of that, and you're getting like a big Dragon Ball Z. Like I'd love getting a yearly Budokai Tenkaichi at the time, but now it's just kind of like we could have had like, and now there's one finally coming out again soon. Looking forward to playing Goku mid again.
I really liked those games. I specifically imported the Japanese ones, the Sparking series. That's what they called them, and specifically because they had the music was Kikuchi BGM, so it basically just used the Japanese Dragon Ball Z BGM, which I'm just totally a fan of.
Yeah. Before we go into talking about all things Mario, are there any other meaningful and memorable video games you want to shout out that are very near and dear to your heart?
Let's see. I went through. I guess Mother 3. I can shout out a little bit. Mother 3 would be a podcast in and of itself, but because I was such a huge EarthBound fan, obviously I was waiting for Mother 3 to come out for forever. And when Mother 3 did come out, I didn't even wait for the English patch. I found a script on GameFAQs, and that's how I played it. And I'm glad I finally replayed it a couple years ago with the translation patch, because God, what a glorious game. I don't like it as much as EarthBound because I think that it's a little too linear, but I do love that it tells a complete story, like a chapter based story, and it's a really heart wrenching game. I think it's a masterpiece. I really would love to see it hit the States for real,
Yeah.
but I'm preaching to the choir. I
Yeah.
think.
It also feels like every year becomes more and more possible because Nintendo is like not becoming a lot cooler about certain things, but they are definitely like more willing to let's do a Famicom Detective Club re-release. Let's remake
Hmm.
Super Mario RPG. That kind of attitude. Let's all
God.
right, you guys complain about the Paper Mario enough. I get it. I get it. Here's the Thousand-Year Door literally again. This is what you've been asking for 2 decades now. We here that kind of attitude. I feel like they're at a point now where now that they're basically grandparents, bad parents become good grandparents sort of attitude. I'm not that kind of thing. They're
Yeah.
not that cool yet, but they are definitely like one of those like they're very much reaching a breaking point with here damn as a philosophy.
No, it's true. Every time a new game gets remade, I don't know. It's like, oh, well, I thought you were gonna give me a Werther's original. This is a Snickers.
Yeah.
This that's that Mario RPG remake announcement came out of nowhere, and I was floored, man. Totally.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second. But you also mentioned something twice now that I
Yeah.
really don't want to let go. Did you make it a habit getting Japanese imports of video games throughout your life?
Yeah. I did. And it honestly started with the One Piece games, for GameCube specifically.
Okay.
Have you seen a GameCube game, like a Japanese GameCube box? They're tiny.
Really?
They're adorable because the discs were so small. They just had like little tiny packaging with like a little like slipcase,
Interesting.
and I would love to just have an entire shelf full of tiny GameCube games. So I imported a couple of One Piece games back then. I imported a Bleach game. I ended up modding my PS2 at one point, and since I was a college student and it was expensive to import games, I would download the ISO and then burn them to a CD.
That's importing in a sense.
In a way, yeah. So I ended up playing Kingdom Hearts 2 entirely in Japanese. Never ended up playing the English version of it.
Hmm.
But the Japanese version's a hoot. Whoever does Hades' voice sounds like they taught Japanese to James Woods. It's really wild.
I would believe that he learned Japanese for the role if he told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll make a habit of importing a game. It's been a while because I think most stuff tends to come out stateside now. But
Mhm.
I almost imported a copy of one of the Super Robot Wars games at some point. But yeah.
Yeah, because this is like a whole culture we haven't touched, like in the show, where like there was a period of time that like I was alive for it, but then like suddenly, like in the once things became digital, like it was a standard for things to have like digital downloads and everything. It became less of like a worry about like is this worth doing all this localization, translation, and then shipping and logistics for this game. Like now that everything's digital, like these conversations, like well, let's just pay for the localization, see what fucking happens, I guess.
Oh no, completely. Back when I was importing games for like PlayStation, I had the second generation PlayStation, so it was like not the really tiny one, not the PS1,
Hmm.
but there's one in between the first gen and that little tiny one where it was a lot harder to mod it. I would like to soft mod mine because I didn't want to open it up and solder anything because I'm a dumb kid. I don't want to ruin my console. There was a slot in the back of the PlayStation where you put a Game Shark, and that's how you would play import games. Like there'd be a little converter thing, and then you could just play a game. Me, I had like a swap disc type thing where I basically put in a disc, and I had to keep I had to take the spring off of the disc tray, which is God, it sounds so old talking about this. Um, so
You
you
got to
could
be an engineer.
yeah, you basically had to swap, like put in a disc that sort of garbled whatever key allowed you to play, games from your region, and then you could play an import disc
Nice.
every single time. Uh,
Yeah.
it was God back in my day.
Back in yeah. It wasn't that long ago, but it also is like if you told somebody now who was like our age back then, like this is what you had to do if you wanted to play a game.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to wait a year and a half for it to come stateside. And they're like, what do you mean you had to wait? Which sometimes you didn't get it. What?
Yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Some we still haven't got. Mother 3. But let's stop talking about RPGs for a second and talk about the Super Mario. You talked about how, Super Mario World rocked your world.
Mm-hmm.
What is your relationship with Mario games and, Mario in general?
Man, when I was a kid, I was a total Mario kid. I loved the games. I loved the cartoon, all of the cartoons, Super Show, Mario 3s, Mario World, whatever. I think there's something about Mario, like as this colorful character, and this world that he just sort of goes through, that it's very round and sort of bubbly. That sort of just it's aesthetically pleasing to me. Yoichi Kotabe, his art style, like I still want to see a side-scrolling Mario game that has his art style. Like
Right.
it's just a cartoon. I think Mario Wonder comes close. But like yeah, there's this indescribable feeling thinking about like the early days of Super Mario, and I was just really enamored with a small mustachioed dude who liked to jump on turtles. I don't know.
Yeah. You were drawn to the TV shows at the time, which is understandable because at the time, like everything that happened in the video games was like pure inference. They didn't have stories or narratives until a certain game came out. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But so you watch these shows as they're airing on TV?
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
The Super Show. Captain Lou Albano, WWF wrestler, was the voice of Mario.
Mhm.
And that was my voice for Mario, this Brooklyn plumber.
I'm Captain Lou Albano talking to you about drugs. Kids, don't be afraid to say no. Anyone that asks you to use drugs is not your friend. Drugs can and will kill. Remember, don't be afraid to turn to your priest, your rabbi, your minister, your moms, your dads, your teachers, because drugs can kill. And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.
So when Mario 64 came out and he sounded like Mickey Mouse, I was like, what is happening? But because Mario had made the jump from 2D to 3D at that point, like I didn't even care.
Yeah.
The cartoons coming out, like it was a really special time to be into video games, since like I don't know, Zelda had a TV show. There's this other show called Captain N the Game Master, which was
It sure was.
yeah, of a bunch of Nintendo property, well, just NES properties, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So it was it was a fun time to enjoy video games back then, and knowing what I know now about like producers and companies, it's a little like, okay, I see why they did the things they did, but when you're a kid, you don't care about any of that, and you just want to watch colorful shit on TV.
So let's talk about a video game developed by Square, starring a little guy named Mario. Alex, what do you think of Mario Hoops 3-on-3?
Honestly, not the worst. It's not the worst. It's not the worst Mario sports game. Kind of fun, and yeah, good drip on everybody.
Great drip. 5 playable characters from the Final Fantasy series are in there. Clearly the greatest Final Fantasy crossover in history. There's never anything else of note that's ever crossed over with Final Fantasy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I can't, none come to mind. Also, it's crazy that Mario crossing over with other massive franchises in the video game space is really only ever done in the context of sports, whether that is Square's Final Fantasy or Sonic the Hedgehog, except when it's time to cross over with the Rabbids, and then they give Mario a gun and it's a strategy game.
Oh my god, that's a wild game.
It's good.
It's good.
It's good.
It's really fun. I picked it up because a friend of mine compared it to Super Mario RPG.
That's not fair to that game.
No, but he's like, it's funny. It's a funny game. I'm like, okay, that's enough for me, I guess.
Yeah, doomed to fail when you present it in those terms, but it is interesting, and I liked playing it. I do have like takes on it and be like, this is definitely a Ubisoft game in terms of like, you can tell like this is like not made by a, in-house, because of just like the presentation of it is like so Western cartoon versus like that. But I still like it. I actually enjoyed that kind of perspective on it, because it's like, we don't really get this in Mario. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when Luigi's Mansion is cartoonish, it's a different kind of cartoony.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any other general takes on Mario before I move forward here?
I will say that I I think Mario World, Mario 3, and Yoshi's Island, if that does count,
It
those
does.
are like just all-timers as far as level design and power-ups go. Those are those are untouchable for me.
Mhm.
I think Mario 64 is a great game. Still, one of the only games from that era that I can still play and feel like it feels good. And I mentioned Super Mario Wonder earlier, and I think it's a great successor to the SNES era.
Yeah, I agree. Any takes about the other 3D Mario games?
I like Sunshine okay.
Okay.
The first Galaxy is really great. I never played Galaxy 2. I bought it. I just never got around to playing it. Mario Odyssey is the closest thing that comes to like blowing me away, like the way Mario 64 blew me away. I really loved Odyssey.
Yeah, it's
Um,
great.
and 3D World, I think 3D World is a spectacular game with amazing music. And Bowser's Fury, which came out, I guess, with the Switch Double Dip of that game, is really awesome. And I would love to see like a full ass Mario game like that.
Totally. I have a sense that that's probably what's going to be coming when a Switch 2 is announced, a game like that.
I wonder.
I don't like this. That's Super Mario Wonder, actually.
Mm.
Bada bing. All right, let's talk about Super Mario RPG.
All right.
Let's talk about the game you actually picked today. The game that's the only one just for me. I am, of course, talking about Super Mario RPG. Super Mario RPG, Legends of the Seven Stars, often known simply as Super Mario RPG, is, if you can believe it, a role-playing game starring Mario. It was developed by Square, now known as Square Enix after a series of mergers and acquisitions. Published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, this came about as a result of Square wanting a hit outside of Japan, and the game's producer, Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of the titular Super Mario, wanting an RPG starring Mario. And the only time Square would ever do a weird crossover ever again. What are you talking about? I like Kingdom Hearts. I'm not shitting on it when I'm saying this. I just like pretending.
It's fine.
All right. Bits. Chihiro Fujioka and Yoshihiko Mikawa were the game's directors. Fujioka would go on to be one of the founders of Alpha Dream, who developed the Mario and Luigi RPG series. He's also a composer and musician and is currently a member of EarthBound Papas, a band led by Nobuo Uematsu, the composer of the Final Fantasy franchise, or many of the games in the Final Fantasy franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And Meikawa would also go on to work at Alpha Dream and worked as the director of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. It is a common misconception that the composer of this game was Kendrick Lamar. This misconception came about because some of his tracks were used in a secret optional Duckworth boss battle. Have you seen those videos of Kendrick Lamar?
No, this is the first time hearing of this.
Okay, to make sure I don't sound insane, if you type in YouTube Super Mario RPG Kendrick Lamar, there is a video that is presenting itself as a track from Super Mario RPG, and it also says Kendrick Lamar All Right, and it's just the song All Right, completely unedited as part, and people have been leaning into the joke since then.
That's pretty funny. I like that. It's good.
It's very funny.
It's a good bit.
Low effort, amazing, great stuff. The game's actual composer was Yoko Shimomura, legendary video game composer, best known for her work on Street Fighter II, the Kingdom Hearts series, which I like, and the Mario and Luigi series, which I love, as well as other beloved RPGs such as Parasite Eve, Legends of Mana, and Live Alive, another Super Nintendo era RPG that had a Switch remake for which she returned to rearrange and orchestrate the new soundtrack. Super Mario RPG's soundtrack includes mostly original music from Shimomura, as well as new arrangements of Koji Kondo tracks from previous Mario games, and 3 tracks from Final Fantasy IV that Nobuo Uematsu originally composed. She was also one of the composers for the game I discussed in the last episode, Breath of Fire. Once again, another Super Nintendo era RPG. So very, very storied composer.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, she deserves all the accolades. I love her so much.
One of my faves. The story of Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars begins at Bowser's Castle, which is usually where a Mario story ends. Mario fights to save the Princess Toadstool, but during the scuffle, a giant sword with a face on it pierces through a star from the sky and crashes into Bowser's castle, sending Mario, the princess, and Bowser flying off into the sky in different directions. This sword, Exor, is a member of the Smithy Gang, a gang of living weapons. The star that Exor pierced was the Star Road, a magical force that grants wishes for the people of the world. Now Mario must gather the 7 star pieces so people's wishes can come true again. Along the way, he is joined by Mallow, a white, fluffy, cloud-shaped boy who believes he's a tadpole, a star spirit who has possessed a wooden doll named Gino, who serves a higher purpose, namely protecting the Star Road. Along the way, Mario is also joined by, hold the fort, Bowser, who wants to get his castle back, and the Princess Toadstool, who also wants to help Mario on this adventure. Luigi was not available and is on manual duty for this adventure. Together, this party will collect the pieces of the star and stop this new threat from taking over the Mushroom Kingdom. Shenanigans ensue. Super Mario RPG was originally released on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1996. This would be the last Mario game published on a Super Nintendo. Other games released in 1996 include Crash Bandicoot, Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, Kirby Superstar, Mega Man X3, Metal Slug, Quake, Resident Evil, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Tomb Raider, the PlayStation version of Tekken 2, which I previously discussed on the show with Jane Altoids, and Super Mario 64. What?
What a year.
Yeah. What do you think of these games, huh?
I've played about half of those. I love Kirby Superstar.
It's great.
I love that game. I don't think any Kirby, and I mean, I love Kirby. I don't think any other Kirby game has toppled it. Maybe I'm just living in the past, but Crash Bandicoot, another game I've never played, nor I don't really care about moving forward towards the screen. I don't know.
For some reason,
I heard it's good.
I like that. I was surprised you hadn't played it since you had a PlayStation at the time.
Well, it was a couple of years. I think I bought a PlayStation when Final Fantasy VIII came out. So
okay.
And 7 I had played on PC first. Which was a detail that I forgot completely.
Interesting.
Metal Slug is one of those games where I think I got it on the Switch. I love how chunky the art is for it. I haven't played it yet, but those kind of Capcom games, or it's a Capcom game, right? Metal Slug?
Metal Slug is
SNK.
SNK. Yeah.
Yeah, well, either way, the Metal Slug series I really appreciate the aesthetics of it.
Great aesthetic, great, pixel design, and like the music is also just like, holy shit, slap my face good.
Yeah.
Visual feast for the eyes too. Kirby Superstar, another game that I played originally on the Nintendo DS, and again, I think another case for game preservation, which we'll get to later.
Yes.
When I got my Game Boy Advance, the games I got that Christmas were like Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, and A Link to the Past. And then later on the DS, I was playing Superstar, Kirby Superstar. I was playing these Super Nintendo games growing up, but just like on a different console.
Oh man, Link to the Past. God damn.
Phenomenal. Yeah, right?
I like too many games. Let's keep rolling.
we love video games here.
We do.
But you love so many video games. What made you ultimately decide on Super Mario RPG?
Well, EarthBound was already done.
Drat.
So this was the second RPG I ever played. The first where RPGs really clicked for me. When I played EarthBound, I like what are expert points? I didn't. It was I think I played through it because Nintendo Power told me to, and because it was a funny game. But Super Mario RPG sort of lays out like from the get go how to play an RPG, and I think it was really helpful in terms of understanding this new style of game that I was into. Also, it's hilarious. It's easy to pick up and play, and has great music. It's in my top 5 games of all time.
Well, at least we made it to top 5. Sorry about EarthBound though.
Top 3, I think, maybe. So
top 3, even better. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And what a great first RPG to play, because it does function as a great on ramp. Like maybe that's what Square was maybe trying to set out to do in like a design sense, because again, they've released Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 2 now. Our Final Fantasy 2, their Final Fantasy 4 our Final Fantasy 3, their Final Fantasy 6. And those games didn't flop, but they weren't hits as they were in Japan, right?
Yeah.
And this is like a great game where it's like, all right, hold on, maybe let me show you something here. Like, he can jump, but what if you took turns hitting each other and like it was different? It's good because it's like you're taking the familiar and it's like using the sensibilities of something to introduce you to a genre. And I love that.
Yeah. I do wonder if the impetus to make this game was to, help bring the RPG genre into audiences outside of Japan.
Sure.
Because I know Final Fantasy VII, that was like a huge push.
It was,
for that.
yeah. I talked about that in the Final Fantasy VII episode. We didn't really have an American conception broadly of what an RPG was. Pokemon was out in Japan, but we didn't have it yet here in America. And the reason it hit so hard everywhere was because, like, not only is it a turn-based thing with cute little monsters, but you can play it with and against your friends. Like that social component, right?
So cool.
Goddamn, between like, Final Fantasy VII and like, Pokemon, that's, a great push forward. But this is clearly like planting the seeds early by taking something familiar and turning it into that genre.
Yes.
Which it worked. Now, do you remember like how you came into playing this game?
Vividly.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So like most children of the 90s, most gamers of the 90s, Nintendo Power Magazine was where I got all of my gaming news. And they featured it quite a bit in terms of like previews. And I already knew what I was getting into at that point. EarthBound had already introduced me to RPGs, and I was still devouring anything Mario at the time, so the stars kind of aligned. My God,
stars, you say?
Yes, 7 of them.
Whoa!
I know. My godmother asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I chose this game. My birthday was about a week after the game was released, so this marked the rare game that I didn't rent before acquiring. Like most games back then, I mentioned this earlier, I would like to play it when friends came over. So I have a lot of really great memories playing with friends and being frustrated at several different bosses. I also have really great memories of carrying the player's guide with me everywhere. I lent it to a friend and I never got it back. So, but it lives on the internet somewhere. I think on archive.org in PDF form. So
it does that, and the EarthBound one too does exist.
I have 2 copies of that.
Oh wow! Clearly your favorite.
Yes.
And it like clearly made an impact on you that you're talking about Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars. This many years later, I'm glad that you got to play this. It's been a whole history of people trying to play this game throughout the years. Let's go over that quickly in a segment I do every episode. No Country for Old Games. I do this every episode. The subject of video game preservation means a great deal to me. I've talked about it a little bit earlier with my relationship with playing handheld versions of Super Nintendo games throughout my life. I believe video games are an art form, and they create experiences that leave an impact on the people who play them. This means very little to publishers, mostly, who have historically struggled with keeping their older games available on modern hardware, and as time goes on, things that were once readily available to purchase to play become more and more difficult to acquire, especially games that come out late in a console's life cycle, such as Super Mario RPG, which came out the same year as Super Mario 64. So in this segment, we're going to rate today's game on a scale of A to ARG. ARG, obviously, being an expression of frustration and how hard it is to acquire a game, and not me covertly advocating for piracy, which is illegal. Piracy is for Jonathan Jones or the Straw Hats. Certainly not for us. Ignore the fact that we talked about the various ways people have pirated games and imported them throughout the years. Arg,
That was, that was the past. You have Crunchyroll now for anime. You don't need to pirate it. It's fine.
You should, though, because you see that Funimation thing?
Oh, God. Jesus. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the art.
For the art.
For the art. Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars was originally released on a Super Famicom in Japan on March 9th, 1996, and the Super Nintendo in North America on May 13th, 1996. It was not released in Europe. They know what they did. It was because localizing a video game that has a lot of text is expensive, and who cares about Europe anyway? Continue. And moving on. Sorry, European listeners. But it would eventually become available to Europeans over a decade later, no way for people to play Super Mario RPG on, say, the Nintendo 64, the Game Boy Advance, or the GameCube. But hey, when the Wii came out, the Virtual Console added it onto. It was on the digital Virtual Console platform in 2008, which is the first time people outside of America and Japan could play it. And it was the way that I originally played this game as a child years ago. Well, I was 13 years old at the time, but as a child. And I never finished it. I'll go into that later as we go down the line here. It was again added into the Wii U Virtual Console in 2015, going into 2016 in some territories. And the Super NES Classic Edition, a dedicated console device that came pre-installed with 21 Super Nintendo titles released in September of 2017. Super Mario RPG was one of these 21 titles, but production for these consoles were discontinued after the 2018 holiday season. So far in this history, we have the Wii Virtual Console, which is no longer active, the Wii U Virtual Console, which is no longer active, the Super Nintendo Classic, which is no longer available to purchase through traditional means. And this is usually the part of the show where I go, and then the game was released on the Nintendo Switch Online, and I have strong feelings about the Nintendo Switch Online as a vector for video game preservation, yada, yada, yada. Then people groan at my bullshit. But, funny thing, wasn't added to the Nintendo Switch Online. And there's apocryphal or maybe stated reasons about the issues with getting this game on more traditional ways of playing throughout the years, because it's a game developed by Square but published by Nintendo, so there's characters that were created by Square that can't be used in other Nintendo games traditionally. But, it was on other digital platforms before. But why wasn't this on the Nintendo Switch in the 6 or 7 years since the Switch has come out? Well, on November 17th, 2023, a remake, simply titled Super Mario RPG, was released worldwide for the Nintendo Switch. This version of the game drops the Legend of the Seven Stars subtitle, but adds a wealth of features, including new battle mechanics, such as being able to switch out party members mid-battle, using triple attacks based on your party configuration, so on and so forth. The game also has updated 3D graphics, animated cutscenes, updated localization, changing the name of several characters, items, and attacks, as well as the option to switch between a newly arranged soundtrack that Yoko Shimomura did or the original SNES soundtrack. There's also some quality of life improvements, additional post-game content. We won't go over everything in this moment, but it adds quite a bit to the original experience. What do you think of the remake really quickly?
Love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, near perfect remake. It's what I kind of want out of a remake. It retains the charm of the original, keeps most of the original script intact, which I think was really important, and it keeps Mario a silent protagonist. I loved the remake.
Right. So as long as it was faithful is what you were really concerned about, because I know, and you were, again, forged in the fires of localization woes. Ted Woolsey, who I talked about in the Breath of Fire episode, was a sort of infamous figure in the localization scene, because at the time, and again, this is mainly one person doing English localization for Japanese games and having to do it on a time crunch mainly by himself. And he was getting direct feedback from the Japanese developers where he could get it, but then sometimes it's just sort of like, I have to work with not only the time crunch, but also the standards and practices of, Nintendo, especially when they were publishing these games. This is a game that definitely had a couple of whatever by people at the time, but since it's a Mario game, it's definitely not the kind of scrutiny that people get up in arms about, like say with Final Fantasy VI or whatever. It's a cute, irreverent game. Why would anybody be mad about it in any context?
Precisely.
Right. So in terms of rating this game on an A to ARG, I can't give it an A necessarily, because this game the new remake is transformative, right? But you can't really toggle back and forth between the original graphical style and the new one like you can with the music, or the way the new Tomb Raider re-release is able to do that between its versions.
God, I wish.
It's clearly a labor of love, and I respect it for that. So I'm not going to give it an ARG, because, like you said, somebody like you who grew up with this game and is, obviously has strong feelings about the ways that experiences and changes that people make can affect your relationship with a work of art that means a lot to you. So it's not an ARG unless you want to make it an ARG. However you want to do things privately, playing the Super Nintendo version of Super Mario RPG is your business. But it's not an A either, because again, for some people, the original matters so deeply. And however you want to do that, that's your business.
I was kind of tickled pink when the SNES Classic came out, and that was one of the games.
Yeah.
It was a really tumultuous time for a while because, Nintendo and Square were beefing, and I think that is largely responsible for the fact that Mario RPG was kind of absent in the ether for a really long time.
Right. Because a year later, Final Fantasy VII would come out on the PlayStation.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of one of those, like, we're going to hang out over here now. I'm sorry. Bye. Because Nintendo, when they were on top, were very strict about the things that be released because they didn't want to like attract the whole like video game controversies about censorship at the time and get that kind of scrutiny. But Sony was like, hey, we'll pamper you, we'll pay you, make a blockbuster. Hell yeah, discs, motherfucker, right? The future. But it's clear in the years since that Square and Nintendo have a closer and less frustrating relationship with one another. And it's been able to make a lot of it's why we have remakes like this now and a wealth of Square games that are on Square Enix games that are on the Switch now.
It's true.
Yeah. So this is a game that did sell well in America. It sold over 2 million copies worldwide. It was one of the best-selling games of 1996 in both Japan and the United States, and it was a very popular rental game at the time too, which also mattered. So this game succeeded in what it set out to do, and the Switch re-release has already outsold the original.
No way! That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, like it already sold over 3 million copies worldwide in its first 12 weeks of release.
That's wild.
It is. And
I love that.
It's great. I'm so glad. Like, obviously, like the Switch is like one of the biggest consoles ever released. And the Super Nintendo was back when video games were still considered like, weren't quite as successful. But it is just like a testament to the quality and legacy of a thing that this was able to sell so quickly and so well. And of course, it has Mario on it, but still.
Of course.
But like this game meant a lot to people at the time. It means a lot to people now. And it's a very financially successful game that's gained a lot of acclaim and has made a bunch of best RPGs ever made lists, best Super Nintendo games ever released lists, best Mario game ever released lists. You'll see this name on a lot of lists. But we're not here to reduce the legacy of Super Mario RPG to lists or sales or graphs or numbers. We're here to discuss the impact this game left on the people who played it. So let's get into it, Alex.
Hi there, my name's Max Newland. My friends and I love anime, but you don't have to take my word for it.
Hello, my name is Max Kostrak, and I have a confession today. I do love anime.
Hey there, my name is Stevie Matos, and I love anime like I love yogurt parfaits.
I watch it, I engage with it, and I think about it a lot.
Give me a good bed of mechs, sprinkled with some harem anime, a slice of life, and some little dabs of a sports anime. Let's go.
Now doesn't that sound delicious? Join us every Monday at the After School Anime Club, a podcast where we play fun games and talk through the anime classics of the 90s and 2000s. That's the After School Anime Club, available now on your podcatcher of choice.
What do you love about Super Mario RPG, and what does it do that you wish more games would do?
God, there's a lot. It's a big question. First and foremost, the humor is what really sticks out to me. I can't speak for the Japanese script, but I do love the aforementioned Ted Woosley a lot. His localization adds a lot of character to this game. As far as the humor just in general goes, though, like all the dialogue, it rewards you for talking to everybody in the game more than once. There are so many characters, if you talk to them like twice, you get even more great dialogue. 3 times, more dialogue. It's great. Also, I love that it gives you the option to answer yes or no questions with hilarious results. Mario can just flat out refuse to help somebody, and it's just great.
And be rude about it.
Yeah, Mario is kind of an asshole in this game if you let him.
He tries to fight a kid.
He does. It's really great.
Yo, why is he looking at me like that? What's up, little bud? You got a staring problem, pal?
Like what, dude? He's just looking at you. He's a baby.
Look at his face. Dumb little face.
It shares this with EarthBound, and as far as like, it makes you want to talk to NPCs because who knows what they're going to say. And I think this game in particular made me fall in love with RPG towns. specifically for the reason that, like, oh wow, it's just full of colorful characters, even though they're all the same sprite. They all are saying something wildly different, or they have an opinion as to what Mario is doing here. And it's kind of funny that you brought up the fact that this game begins where a standard Mario game ends. It goes to show you that the story of Mario, or like, you know, the classic trope of how Mario games tend to go, like, you know, oh, we all know this. Like, everybody's familiar with this. So, like, you know, let's mix it up a little bit. And in this version of, like, you know, Mario's world, you know, he's a hero who everybody knows. Everybody's heard of him. Everybody knows that his jumps are second to none, which I think is a really fun thing to know Mario by. His jumps, not his like plumbing prowess or his you know, fireballs. Yeah, the characterization really makes this game something special. Mario is a silent protagonist, which I, you know, it depends on the game I'm playing, but, you know, I think it works really well for Chrono Trigger, works really well for EarthBound, it works really well for this game. Mario doesn't, like, he doesn't talk, but instead he pantomimes, which is such a fun thing. The fact that our main hero, not just our main hero, but Mario, you know, this classic character, can only express himself in pantomime movements is, it's really wild. And everybody knows exactly what he's talking about too. It's just language everybody seems to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting because like he is like the silent protagonist, but he's not like the traditional form of a silent protagonist where it's like a projection of like the main character into this world.
Yeah.
Like how Link has generally operated traditionally in the Legend of Zelda games, or, you know, the classical silent protagonist of an RPG. He is very expressive. He's an iconic character. Everybody knows who Mario is when he introduces himself. It's like, oh, yeah, the jump. Do a jump. Come on, do a jump. I need your autograph. Give me a jump. That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's almost like it's playing with the idea of like what a silent protagonist is, because Mario is super expressive, and like your dialogue options when you do have like a yes no binary are like, you know, it's like yes, and then I'll fucking punch you in the head, man. Those kind of things. Leave me alone. You're weird. Those kinds of like those are like your no options. Like he does have a personality, and like there is stuff that Mario does that's like against your will. For example, like the way that like the kids like, I mean, Mario's cool, but Gino's cooler, and Mario's like, I'll hit you. I will hit you. They have to hold him back, that kind of stuff. It's just so interesting that he is like so expressive that he just stops just short of talking at all times.
Yeah. The dialogue options in this game are really great. There's a lot of hidden ones that are really, really fun. One in particular is after, you know, you get Toadstool in your party, you have the option to completely turn down, like, moving forward in the story. And if you do it 4 times, which is as many party members as you have, they all kind of beat you up, which is really, really funny. I love that it doesn't overload you with Mario characters. There's enough familiarity, but there's also enough new locales and creatures and NPCs that, you know, it makes it believable that they could live in Mario's world as well.
Yeah. This game is like something that like brings character to Mario and a lot of things, because at this point, like, you have the television shows that are not official necessarily. They're, you know, I don't want to reduce them the meaning that people have with them by saying they were products, but they are definitely like an Americanization. That's like, you know, we license this, we make a TV show, boopity boppity. It's here, watch it. But like this is like, you know, Nintendo publishes this. They work together. Miyamoto is a producer on it. They give creative input on like the direction of this thing, and it makes the relationship that the player has with the Mushroom Kingdom feel special in a way that it hasn't felt before. It's not just like a hero rescuing the princess story anymore. You're seeing what the society of the Mushroom Kingdom is like. You talk to characters that you're familiar with, like toads and stuff, and you're excited to see them because, you know, somebody playing an RPG before, especially as an American, it's like, why would I talk to everybody in the town? I don't care about who these people are. But if you are a Mario fan and being a Mario fan since the first Super Mario game, you're like, I can talk to Toad, I can talk to Yoshi, I can say hello to my friend Yoshi. I'll talk to Yoshi. That makes that connection so important. It's another thing about like how this is just a great first RPG, because it like shows the importance of like talking to these people, because they mean a lot to you. They're Mario characters, right? And that lets you discover things. It's just really good how it like deepens the connection of the Mario world in a way that is has never been able to be done before, but is also able to deepen one's connection with the genre in a way that people who may not have connected with it before have.
I think it's also a really great way to characterize. It does really great characterization with characters like Bowser and Toadstool, or Peach rather, who don't really, up to this point, haven't really gotten. We haven't gotten to see anything from their perspective as far as, as them as characters goes. I mean, in a Mario game, they're just a side scroller, but you know enough about Mario to know that he's the hero. He's going to save the princess. But how does the princess feel about all this? What does Bowser feel about all this? And when you make changes to one's world, you have to see them cope with it. Bowser is ousted from his keep. Toadstool is, she feels helpless because she's trying to do what she can. She escaped from I think she escaped from Boosters. No, you have to go get her from Boosters.
You have to, you and Bowser team up to go get her from Boosters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that there's justification for why Peach and Bowser are joining you on this journey. Two characters that wouldn't necessarily have teamed up with Mario in the past based on their normal roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what they do with Bowser specifically in this game.
Yeah.
He's so I don't know, he's like a bumbling villain. But also like there's a coolness about him too that I really he thinks he's so cool, and there are also cracks of insecurity there too, which is really funny to me.
Sure.
And Peach is sort of the opposite, where she's just sort of fed up with being cooped up in a castle all day and just wants to kick some ass.
Yeah.
Bringing them into the forefront with our new party members was a really smart decision on their part.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, because I played part of this game as a kid on the Wii Virtual Console, and I enjoyed what I played of it. It's just like, as you get distracted playing so many other video games as a kid, jumping back and forth and whatever. But I never finished it. I played about half of it. I finished it for this playthrough with the new remake, which again is very loyal to the original in terms of the spirit of the thing, right? And I'm struck by it because I did play the Mario and Luigi series growing up, and that does have that characterization of Bowser as like he is fun. He's the fun villain, but he's never like the main villain. And like by the time you get to Bowser's inside story, you're playing as Bowser and like getting that great characterization and experiencing it through the POV of the player. And this all starts with this game giving Bowser that kind of personality. Obviously, the people who worked in this game go on to work at Alpha Dream, who go on to develop these Mario and Luigi games, but it is something that like people who are fans of the Mario series kind of implicitly understand about Bowser at this point, and that's carried over to his like characterization in games like Mario Odyssey, where he is kind of like that too. Even if he is the main boss, he's not like pure evil. He's just kind of like fun evil, sort of. And talking about how early this is in like the general life cycle of Mario, we call her Toadstool because in the Super Nintendo version, she doesn't have the name Peach until Super Mario 64. Which comes out that same year later, but this is still like that for that first 10 years from Super Mario Brothers until 1996, with Super Mario RPG being the last game where she's referred to as Toadstool. Like, this is how early we are in the life cycle of everything.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Mallow and Gino. Mallow and Gino are great.
Mm-hmm.
To touch on the remake a little bit, what I love about the remake is that it's sort of it gives you more chances to play as Mallow and Gino. In the original game, I mean, just across the board, Bowser and Peach are better to have in your party just because their stats are much higher. But Mallow has that really, like Mallow and Gino, the story is mostly focused on them. Gino is sort of, the reason that you're going around collecting these star pieces is to repair the Star Road, which Gino is, in service to.
He's the exposition character.
Yeah.
He's
He doesn't have too much of a personality outside of that, but he's got a really nifty design. And I think that's why a lot of people gravitate towards him.
Mm-hmm.
Mallow is the real heart of the team, I think. I love that he's kind of a crybaby, and you sort of get the sense that he's a little cloud guy, and that sort of rings true when he starts crying and it starts raining. So he's got these neat weather powers. It's kind of a funny but sad story that he has to undertake, where he's like an orphan. And he was raised by frogs, and he's off in search of his real parents, which, once you get there, it's a tearful reunion. It's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
if that's a spoiler, whatever.
We're
It's
in
a-
spoiler territory. Yeehaw. We're here.
Yeah, it's a 25-year-old game.
But it's 28. I'm turning 28 this year.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's so many things that make me feel old these days.
Sorry.
No, not your fault.
You look young. You look great.
Thank you. Good genes. I really enjoyed the fact that you can switch between party members in the new game because it forced me to be Mallow and Gina a little bit more in battle. And I don't think it's fair to just use the 3 party members. They're a unit, and I like that they go on adventures together.
Yeah. Speaking as somebody who finished this game for the first time recently, like I very much appreciate the style of being able to switch out your characters and be able to attack on the same turn, things like that. It not only makes the game feel more modern, even though it's something, say, Breath of Fire was doing back in 1994, but it is definitely like a good quality of life addition, but it does also like make you experiment with team composition more in a safe environment where you don't have to like wait for a battle to end to do something new. Like you can be like, okay, what is like Peach's deal, and how does this interact with this? And now you have like that triple attack ability where you're actually motivated to try as many combinations as possible, so you can see the cutscene of the people doing the attack on the enemy you're fighting. And I just really like that. I really dig that. That's a really cool addition that the new developers did.
Yeah,
to make this, it's seamless. It's so seamless.
It is. It's really nice. Yeah, it adds a little extra layer to the battle system, which I love.
Art Piazza are the developers of this remake, by the way, just so people know.
I think they did Dragon Quest V remake.
They did the ports, the handheld ports of the Dragon Quest games, and they also, for Dragon Quest XI, did the 2D.
Such a cool feature.
Yeah, incredible. I haven't played Dragon Quest XI yet, but I own it, and I am looking forward to messing around with that.
It's one of my favorite RPGs in the last 10 years.
That's what I keep hearing.
It was number 1 until Yakuza 7.
Dragon Quest 8 was one of the games I would watch my older brother play.
Oh, wow. Right on. So, I mean, as long as we're talking about that, let's talk about the battle system. The battle system is fairly straightforward, turn-based, but it has the addition of timed hits. You know, I think that every RPG should have time hits. It's a fun mechanic. The only other, I think Sea of Stars, which came out last year, implements like a time hit system. And Final Fantasy VIII also has that sort of trigger button thing that Squall uses in his attacks. But I think that timed hits are a great incentive to keep yourself engaged in the battle that's going forward. And I really like that mechanic.
What's cool about it is, like, we talked about how this is using the Mario aesthetic, right? Not only are you in the Mario world and you can jump around in the world like Mario, and there's like little platforming segments you can do when you're in the non-battle modes, but by having like a timed hit thing, it is kind of like a platforming sensibility brought into a battle system. And this is something they iterate on in like the Mario and the Luigi games and the Paper Mario games especially. But man, like just seeing that in like the most basic form of like time a hit, because timing is very important, and timing is a huge and crucial component of platforming games. Seeing that brought into a new genre is just, again, like a really smart consideration of the form of a thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
The weapons that you get are all, generally for Mario, they're all Mario based. Like either as a punch glove or a shell that he can kick or a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And Bowser's got,
Bowser's are the fun at best.
Yeah, he's got the chain chomps. He's got like a claw.
One of his weapons is throwing Mario at the enemy.
Yeah. That one's super good. And Peach has a frying pan, which I love when that shows up in other games. But I think it's really cool because timed hits also, it's an incentive for like, oh, we get an extra little animation with your cool weapon if you land this hit right. And your magic attacks also can be timed as well, which leads to one of the hardest things I've ever done in a game. One of Mario's magic attacks is called the super jump. Mario, of course, has a standard jump attack, but super jump, if you time the button just right, like right as you land on the enemy's head, you jump again and again and again and again. Now, this is something I learned from watching speedrunners this past year. Super Mario RPG speedrunning is a fascinating world that I've been sort of slowly, I'm not going to say dip my toe into, because I don't have the time to speedrun a game or learn how to do it, but I love watching speedruns of this game because people have beaten it in like 3 hours. And in order to do that, you have to master super jumps. And if you get 100 super jumps, there's an item called the super suit, which gives you like tremendous stats. I did that for the first time for the remake because I wanted to 100% it. It took me 3 months. But the thing is, you have to get the frames. I think it's like there's like a 3-frame window where you have to hit the button, and you do that 100 times, and it's absolutely fucking stupid. Um,
Yeah.
But the fact that level of challenge is in this game, which is, I think, as far as RPGs go, pretty remedial and really short. But Dunkey, the YouTuber, did a review for this game, or at least for the remake, and I couldn't have put it better myself. He said something to the effect of, it's like a 12, 13-hour game, but it just moves. Like, it just fucking moves. Like, there's no super grindy parts of it, really. It just keeps throwing stuff at you, and it's just paced really well.
Yeah, it's got like a screwball comedy kind of pacing to it where everything is constantly happening, so it almost feels longer because, like, what do you mean this is only a 90-minute movie? So much happens in it. But it is a very well-paced, and like even if you do side quests and diversions, you're probably gonna like maybe 15 hours. There's definitely like there's especially in the remake, they add post-game stuff for you to do, boss rush modes, secret optional boss that you can take on. But this game is very, very short relative to other RPGs in a way that it, again, is in service of the fact that it is based off of a platformer game, and people who love Mario are probably used to shorter experiences, but also in a way where it's still dense and rich and still has little secrets for people to discover that are in the spirit of a traditional RPG.
Yeah, I feel like RPGs these days feel really daunting because, like, I think the new Yakuza game is like 150 hours or something like that.
And has multiple game modes. It has a Pokemon mode and Animal Crossing mode, which I'm so excited to mess with. But
I'm very excited as well, but I know that it's just going to take up half my year. So I welcome like smaller games like this. Like Mario RPG caps out your level at 30. Like you can't get any higher than level 30. And I think it's nice that it caps you out there just because it feels like there's a bit of an end point.
Yeah, it does. And especially since like it does have the bottlenecking thing with stats where by the time you hit like 2021, you're seeing diminishing returns on how often you're leveling up. And that's almost like a swatting your hand and be like, stop grinding, keep going. I think this game does really well that some RPGs do and many don't is all of the enemies are on the overworld, which is, again, the kind of thing where it's like, this is a Mario game. If you don't see where the enemies are, it would, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like it's of a piece of that aesthetic, but it is also a really good way of like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to fight an enemy right now. So if I do some platform, if I jump over this enemy, or if I navigate through the space correctly, I don't have to deal with it. Great.
Yeah, that's another really cool thing about this being a Mario game too, is that you can get power-ups. Specifically, the invincibility star. If you happen across a question mark box with an invincibility star, you can take out enemies in one hit. And at one point, enemies will just rush at you just to die, and you'll gain a couple levels in that instance. It's pretty rad.
It's so satisfying when it does, because it's rare. Like there's like one in like every major area, I think, but they're a little out of the way or secret or something. Or you hit it and it's like, oh, this is a big room of enemies. Let me just, and then you see if you hit it right and hit the right enemies and clear out the room, you level up, and it's great because I didn't have to battle during any of that. EarthBound doesn't have something similar, but like if you are strong enough, it just skips the battle entirely because like you win. But it's just fun. It's more fun here where it's using a Mario thing from a Mario game and putting that into an RPG world, and like you're killing rows of enemies.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It also has a bunch of mini games too, which I think is really fun because it sort of reminds me of. Well, I think that Tetsuya Nomura worked on this game as well, and I think he might have designed some monsters for it. I'd have to double check, but I know that Nomura wanted Final Fantasy VII to be more than just an RPG and have outside elements. I think of Gold Saucer a lot and the snowboarding stuff in 7, and Super Mario RPG is packed full of stuff like Beatlemania,
which is completely missable. I didn't know about it until the end, and like you get that by doing something you mentioned earlier, which is talking to the same guy over and over again.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, Beatlemania. You sort of figure out musical notes. You go back to Tadpole Pond, and you basically create a composition with Tadovsky. There's the Great Guy Casino. There's so many different things to do in this game that have nothing to do with the story or just RPG mechanics. in Nimbus Land, there's a hotel that you stay at where like you can stay in the regular bed or the super fluffy bed, which gives you like, interactive dreams. And you stay in the bed and you can watch a bunch of different Mario dreams. Like he's dreaming he's talking to Toad and Toad turns into a monster, or God, I don't remember any of those off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of different configurations.
Yeah. I can't find anything saying that Nomura specifically worked on Mario RPG, but it is a good shout comparing it to Final Fantasy VII, because a big thing that Square definitely does going forward to make themselves distinct from series like Dragon Quest is by having these like mini game segments throughout their games to break up the pacing of it. So it's like we could do sprawling open world thing, but like once in a while, let's throw them a mini game with brand new mechanics because we have buku bucks to make a video game now. Let's have Cloud snowboard. Let's have Cloud do something on a motorcycle. Let's do an interminable submarine section. This is definitely like the origin of that kind of mindset. I can't speak. I don't know if I haven't played Final Fantasy VI yet. I can't say if they do anything like that, but I remember Chrono Trigger having like, motorcycle segments and things like that. But
yeah, 6 doesn't really have anything like that off the top of my head.
But this is definitely of like, I remember doing the minecart thing, and I'm like, oh shit, we're Cloud snowboarding now, or the barrel run, or the waterfall thing, all that kind of stuff. It's like, this is Final Fantasy VII, man.
Yeah, it gives you so much to do. It's one of the things I really love about it. You can kind of live in this world, and something I wanted to do since I was a kid. I wanted to live in the Mario world somehow, and you can sort of take your time since it's an RPG. It's nice.
It is. We love the music of this game so much. I love the Mario RPG SNES compositions. They're all wonderful and beautiful. But a special shout out to Shimomura coming back to rearrange the tracks for the remake, because oh my god, I knew that this music sounded like Kingdom Hearts music when it was on that SNES sound chip. It all sounds like music from Kingdom Hearts now, with like the orchestration. And that's not the big appeal for it for me. It's like all well-made compositions. But man, she nailed it. She nailed it. It's so full of life, and the orchestration is just masterful.
Every song is a banger. I love that the remake allows you to switch back and forth between the original and the new compositions. But the new compositions are like, she came back and she like made them a little longer. She added some flourishes. It's just masterful. I really love what she did with the rearranged soundtrack. It just sounds so good. God. So the soundtrack to this game is really great. There's not much Mario music at all, honestly. There's, the main theme, sort of. The Super Mario World Overworld shows up a few times. But for the most part, it's all, like, original music. And it gives such life to every single one of these locales. And to the enemies, too. The smithy and / weapons theme, it has like a motif. It's like da 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 da, and like that motif shows up in many different ways throughout the entire game, and it sort of like gives you a hint as to like who you're fighting. Because I don't think that you don't get that music when you fight Valentina or Punchinello. The music is great, and I love Yoko Shimomura.
Yeah, it's wonderful music. The music is such like a big focal point of the game, because there's obviously the Todovsky stuff, how that shows up in something that you actually have to mess around with and like solve a musical puzzle. But timing is such an important thing in this game, and it's so good that not only does like the music sound like, it's so good that the music's so much about like the timing and tempo of something. How that is such a recurring element. Also has like banger music to help you along that.
Yeah.
Not quite my tempo. 5, 6, and... Not quite my tempo. It's all good. No worries. Here we go. 6, 7. Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman? Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
I will fuck you like a pig. Now, are you a rusher or are you a dragger? Or are you gonna be on my fucking time?
I'm gonna be on your time.
You must be upset. Are you upset? No. No, so you just don't give a shit about any of this?
I do give a shit about
Are you upset? Yes or fucking no? Say it.
I'm upset.
Louder!
I'm upset.
Louder!
I'm upset.
Yeah, especially like there's that Yoshi racing mini game that's completely optional, completely missable. Like seeing the Yoshis entirely is a missable thing.
Yeah.
But that is definitely when you have to do those Yoshi races, it's so much built into you understanding timing and rhythm of the cymbals that are sounding.
Boy,
yeah.
I had such a hard time with that when I was a kid.
Oh, it's hard as fuck. And I played clarinet. I know how to like keep track of tempo and stuff, but it was still hard for me.
By and large, it sucks. I hate the Yoshi minigame. I think it's a little better in remake. But the original, boy, I just forget about it, man.
I swear to fucking God, I will stop being so polite. Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you. I can still fucking see you, Mini-Me!
Booster's theme is really cool. I want to give a shout out to the Booster music because it's like surf guitar, kind of bringing back Pulp Fiction into the conversation again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I don't know. Like,
do you have a favorite track?
God. I love Monstro Town, like, a lot. Monstro Town is one of those, like, it's one of those songs that I'll hum to myself, and it's got, like, a vibraphone, marimba type sound to it. So Monstro Town, for the uninitiated, is, like, it's sort of like, it's where all of Bowser's minions go to retire. And it's sort of just like, yeah, we were mean before, but now we're kind of good and taking it easy. And the music sort of reflects that. I really do love Monstro Town. I also like the attract mode music, which I think is called Super Happy Delightful Adventure. It's a song they made just for the attract mode, and it's awesome. Because it's got a medley of a whole bunch of different songs. It's got like the Mushroom Kingdom theme, which I think is really great. Do you have a favorite track?
It's banger after banger. Like
it really is.
I think it's less than 2 hours of music total, but and it's a 12-hour game, so it's not going to have so much variety. Like you're going to hear a lot of the same battle themes used over and over again, which is perfectly fine with me because all the battle themes sound great. The standard boss battle theme, the weapon boss battle themes all sound really good. It's hard to say, and maybe it's just like cultural osmosis at this point, but I really cannot deny the power of Beware the Forest mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's like built into, it's the subject of multiple memes at this point, if you can believe it.
I mean, you referenced the famous YouTube video, or I guess at that point was Albino Black Sheep or E-Bomb's World, but the famous Flash video, Newgrounds.
Yeah, there was that earlier, and like it's used in a bunch of like YouTube poop adjacent kind of stuff. Or yeah, there's that I was never book smart, I'm money smart thing that's coming back with that too. It has taken on life, like different forms over the years, and it makes sense because it just sounds so good. It's a very like, it sounds very Kingdom Heartsy.
When I first had beaten the game back then, I had recorded the last, like the ending credits music. As soon as you beat the game up to the very, very end, I recorded it using a tape recorder up against the speaker of my television. And whenever I got to the bit where Gino leaves his body to go back to the Star Road, I felt really emotional. And for me, I'm a bit of a blubberer when it comes to like watching something and then a music cue really it comes in and hits. And that like that last track in particular really, like, it still kind of gets me, like, choked up a little bit. I don't know. There's something to it.
I get it.
And maybe it's like, this the journey's over, that's it. But there's something melancholy about it that
it is. It's like similar to like at the end of Ocarina of Time when like you're in the Temple of Time and Navi like flies off through like the out there, and it like there's like a sad like note because it's like somebody leaving you. And it's final. It's conclusive. It's like you said, melancholy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super good. The music is actually the reason that I wanted Gino to be in Smash Brothers, period. I just wanted more rearrangements of the music. And because of Remake, we got that. So I'm cool with Gino Armello not being in a Smash Brothers game now, because now we have new music. It's fine.
Yeah, it's so funny that Sora got in there, and Cloud, and Sephiroth, and everybody.
Oh my god.
else.
They're like, a Square Enix character's going to be in it. And I'm like, Gino? Because I think Gino was like at the top of a lot of polls back when Brawl was coming out. And Square Enix and Nintendo were still a fussing and a feuding, so it was not in the cards.
Dragon Quest Hero, which one? All of them.
I thought that was really dope. I don't know,
It's dope. It is very dope. It's just like Minecraft Steve before Gino, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, I don't get Minecraft. I'm old.
At this point, it's kind of like a legacy thing. Like if you're notable enough in like the zeitgeist, they'll put you in there. But I totally understand why Gino has been such a fix, because I love Gino in this game. Obviously, like if you put a gun to my head and said Mallow or Gino, I'm like Mallow. But I love Gino. I love like I know he's like a narrative character, but as using anime stuff, right? It's the exposition, the driver of the plot, and it's like, man, you're kind of like Trunks if he was Pinocchio. It's great. I love it.
No, he's the cool character. He's the Poochie.
No, he's like the DM's NPC character who like has all the strongest stuff to get you across like the hurdles. He has a gun for an arm. He's a puppet with a gun. How am I not supposed to love that?
The character designer tweeted out a few years ago some really cool, really different rough sketches of what Gino was supposed to look like, and a lot sharper looking. And he used a sword, so the Trunks comparison is not way off at all.
Yeah. I also like how he's introduced through like a kid playing with the toys and being like, well, he's a character that's cooler than Mario. I love Gino. He's like, who the fuck is Gino? And then at the end, when like his star body is like leaving Gino, come back. No, please.
You were so cool. He's literally Poochie. He left because he had to, his home planet
Poochie.
needs him.
Fuck. He is.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Wow, Poochie came from another planet? I guess.
But yeah, Mallow's cooler. I love an arc.
Yeah.
He's the Gohan or whatever,
He is. He really is. Before we continue, there's a couple other things I wanted to bring up. Link and Samus are both in this game. They're both sleeping in different inns. It's pretty awesome. There's a whole lot of secrets in this game that I can't even just like. It's a whole other podcast, but if you're playing this game for the first time, look around. There's so many cool things to see and do. You can fight Helix. That's a thing.
Oh yeah, the literal Final Fantasy, like in its original OC Final Fantasy character. He's like, what is this guy? I'm all of Final Fantasy, basically. Fuck you. Final Fantasy 4 boss music. Kill me. See if you can kill me.
Yep.
He's just like he's in there, and it's an optional boss as a secret. He's the hardest boss in the game. It rips.
Yeah, it's awesome.
To your point, like this is a game that's so densely packed with stuff, we couldn't fit everything worth mentioning in this episode. And
Completely.
It's a 12-hour game. How great is that?
Yeah. Even if we did a 12-hour podcast, we wouldn't be able to put them all in.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about Booster alone for forever. All the original characters hit. That's genuinely impressive.
My favorite thing about Booster is they could have easily just put in Wario, and they didn't. It's Booster is hilarious and needs to show up again in another game. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I feel vaguely similarly about how, like, Mallow is, like, the crybaby, sad, like, emotionally all over the place person. Like, you could have this have been Luigi. Obviously, you have to change the arc of stuff around, but this is a character that Luigi could have played, but Luigi is only in the end credits, and fuck Luigi. We didn't need Luigi in this game. I didn't miss him.
There's a bit in the game where you go and you look at people's wishes, like people wishing on stars, and you go to the star hill, and if you talk to these little stars, you can sort of map out who in the game has made these wishes, and one of the stars says, "I wish I were a cool plumber like my brother Mario," or something like that.
I wish I was as brave as Mario, or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. And there's your Luigi. There he is.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. Like, I like Luigi. I'm not saying fuck Luigi all the time. I'm just saying, like, it's so fascinating that this game is so Mario and has all these original characters who feel classic as soon as you meet them. And it doesn't have a Luigi. It doesn't have a Wario. And it's fine. It is perfectly okay without them. You don't have Donkey Kong, but you do have a prison, an imprisoned, chained up Kong.
You do. Oh yeah. So a really cool thing about being able to switch out to any party member in the remake is Mallow has an attack that, it's sort of like Sense or Assess or whatever you have in Final Fantasy, that you get to see their weaknesses and hit points and stuff. But if you time it, you get to hear what they're thinking. And to 100% the game, you got to do that to every single enemy. But sometimes they think things like the weird Donkey Kong chained up Kong guy. I think he's thinking something to the effects of like, "Please don't sue," or something like that.
This is my original character. Do not steal.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know what your feelings are on the Illumination Mario movie, right? And like, I watched the movie before I finished this game, like, perception of story not being a thing, but it's like, it's interesting, right? That this is like a story that like kind of works on a cinematic level, has like beats and arcs and characters. And it's like Mario is like the vector through which you experience a lot of the stuff. You don't have to make Mario the dynamic growing character. He can like have people grow around him and be interesting. And I really like how this game is like basically going in with like that, what Mario is. You don't have scruples about, you're not confused. Like we just make this stuff as we go along and it's great. It does it so cleanly and so quickly too, that it's like, I understand why people want more out of Mario than what's given to them through the main games.
Completely. Yeah. I think this game has it all, honestly, when it comes to that. It's a story with Mario that I can really, really grasp onto, but it's a good Final Fantasy game. Let's be honest, it's a Final Fantasy game just as much as it is a Mario game.
Yeah. The RPG part,
Yeah.
We talked this game up a lot. What are some things that this game could have done better?
Yeah, this was a hard one to think about because I think it's a perfect game, but then again, as great as the isometric style is, and I love it, but there are a few places where like the platforming is really frustrating and required to move on. And I wish, even in the remake, they're still there and frustrating.
You said it, so I don't have to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like the isometric style was kind of a art direction thing in service of like the limited graphics of the Super Nintendo. It's impressive. It's a very impressive visual game. It does a lot. I love the art style of the Super Nintendo game, but it is also a perspective that makes platforming very difficult, especially if you need to go up a vine near the cloud area. That's the thing I got stuck on the most. I never died in a single battle in this game. I do not know what the game over screen looks like. I do know what falling over and over again looks like.
That sequence, I think, I had no trouble with that particular sequence in the remake, but the original, it sucks. It's totally like you can't tell what the fuck you're doing.
I didn't find out that there was like an invisible thing that you could hit to like make it easier until well along.
You find out eventually. That and like you have to go up to the use the Sky Troopas to get up the precipice. Yeah, that's another big pain in the ass because you get an item if you do it quick enough.
Yeah.
All the hard shit in this game, if you do it quick enough, you get rewarded for it. So I guess that's cool. But
the bullet bill challenge in the middle of the game, yeah.
Oh God, Jesus, yeah. That's another, the isometric stuff, it just doesn't work sometimes, and that's okay. I already mentioned how much I hate the Yoshi race. I think the Yoshi race sucks. Figure out a better way to do it.
I think I would be better about it if the process of like after you lose wasn't, all right, now I'm back on the ground. Now I have to go back to Yoshi and climb on Yoshi's back so Yoshi can speak Yoshi's. And then I go to the Yoshi that gives me the cookies that I can use as leverage or collateral on the upcoming race to race Boshi again.
Yeah.
And now I can race Boshi again. Fuck, I lost so hard. How did I lose worse before? All right, got to go back to Yoshi, talk to the Yoshi cookie guy, and then go back to Boshi, and then I got to do it. If they cut out all of that stuff, it was just like, you lost, want to try again? I would have been golden.
Yeah.
I would have been frustrated still, but I would be less frustrated.
Completely. Any other complaints I think that I have might have just been addressed in the remake, just little quality of life improvements. Like we mentioned ad nauseum, switching out members on the fly, but something that the remake does a lot better is a lot of like menu stuff. Descriptions of items are a little more clear as to what they do if you equip them. And something we didn't mention before, that there's a certain number, like 60 something hidden chests. Like they're just invisible chests, and if you collect them all, then awesome. It's just a way to 100% the game. But in the original iteration of the game, there is a hidden chest that you can only get in one area of the game right at the beginning, and then from then on, an invisible wall blocks it. But they fixed this in the remake. You can get it whenever. It's in the Toadstool's castle.
And the signal ring that you use to detect that's also accessed earlier in the game than it is in the remake too.
Yeah, you don't get that until like closer to the end of the game in the original.
Yeah, I think you're in like Cloud City or whatever it's called before you get up there.
Yeah, Mallow's parents, Lando and Lobot.
Yeah, Lando. I just realized Lando, Cloud City. Fuck. Oh god.
Oh my god, Lando. That seems obvious.
Sorry, your Lobot mom joke was good. I was just like, Lando. Fuck.
No. Is it?
God damn, George Lucas.
Jesus. God bless him. God bless the man.
Yeah. Continue.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the remake improved on stuff that I never even had thought about before. And I think it's been getting a little pushback, made the game quote unquote easier, but at the same time, like Mario RPG has never been like a super hard game to begin with. And I think that like if you nail a timed hit correctly in the remake, it does splash damage, which I think it can help. I mean, it makes the battles a little less tedious too. So I think that's that's perfectly a fine mechanic to add, I think.
Anything that's in service of pacing isn't necessarily a bad thing. And anything that like rewards the player for playing the game well should be commended. And the things that it adds, again, feel very seamless in a way where it feels like, was this in the original or not? I can't tell. I learned after the fact for a lot of things. And the splash damage thing was one such thing. I think those changes are good. I empathize with people who struggle with the art direction if they find it too clean. I find it personally gorgeous, especially in interiors and caves or anything with lighting. Yes. I find it incredible. But I also understand people who may find like the style a little too clean.
I think that remake does a really good job of translating all of the pre-rendered backgrounds in a way that really services the original art style. And then when you go back and look at the original art style, it seems a lot more grungier because of the color limitations. I just think remake is a prettier game because they now have the technology to sort of bring to life what they wanted to initially. Not to bring George Lucas into this again, but I think that something like that serves its purpose as long as it doesn't outright replace the original thing. And bringing back to your point of game preservation, I think that once the remake has sold enough units, perhaps we will see it on the NSO at some point.
Maybe.
But the NSO does not equal game preservation, of course. That's yeah.
Don't get me started.
I will not.
But I do agree that obviously I would love for there to be an option to talk, but I understand in service of the speed at which the game moves is completely different. There's little changes obviously in the battle system that cannot be translated over. There's stuff that it's doing specifically in the service of this new remake style that would make that a challenge. But it also would be cool if hey, I think a thing that could stand to be done is Animal Crossing it, where in the original Animal Crossing games, they just had an emulated version of an NES game that you could just play in universe. It would be so cool if they did something like that, where the original version is included separately somehow if you wanted to do something like that. But I understand that's pipe dream shit.
It would have made the game even more perfect for me if I could just play the original too. Just have that option. I
agree. But I totally see the appeal of this game. I see why it is stuck in the minds of people for the last 28 years. And I'm really glad that you asked to come onto the show, and so I could finally have the motivation to play through and finish this game. I'm glad the timing worked out, that there was a remake too. That is just simply wonderful.
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about the multiple Mario RPGs that were released in the wake of this thing.
Okay, so I purposefully skipped Paper Mario when it came out. Nintendo Power had a Super Mario RPG 2 coming up, and I was really excited. And then when I found out that it wasn't going to be an actual sequel, and it had this weird Paper Mario, I was like, nope. I hard noped out of it. And I didn't end up playing that game until like maybe 2 years ago. And I wish I did play it back then, because it's just as, I think it's not just as charming. I think it has its own charm. It has its own humor to it. I think that there's certain things that it does that they probably could be improved upon. I have not played Thousand Year Door. I heard it's amazing.
Coming up.
I fully intend on getting it when it comes out, just because I've heard so many good things about it. But like the first Paper Mario game I played was the Wii one, and I hated it to the point where I tried playing it for 2 weeks, and then I just sold it to a friend of mine because I just couldn't. It felt like there was too much of one thing. It was either platforming or dialogue, but I just couldn't gel with the Wii version.
Sure.
Paper Mario has a really charming style. I really think it's cute. If it's for me, we'll see when Thousand Year Door comes out. Eventually, I'll finish the first Paper Mario, but I have so many things in my backlog that I got to finish first.
Same.
I will say I do love Mario and Luigi a lot.
Yes.
I haven't played the sequels, unfortunately, but I loved the first one so much. It was like one of the first RPGs on the Game Boy Advance that I thought was really excellent. It was really funny. Like Mario RPG 7 Stars, it has this, like, you believe that these are characters that could live in the same world as Mario. I love the battle mechanics too.
Yeah.
And I also love it, like the way Mario and Luigi both say thunder and fire, like that live rent free in my head constantly.
Yeah. I really like something that this game does that the Paper Mario games also do, is having that shared pool of magic instead of having individual magical things that you can regulate. I'm pretty sure Mario and Luigi, they have separate magic pools for their syrup gauge or whatever they call it. But I love the Mario and Luigi series, especially Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story. I also really like Dream Team a lot too, which is very Luigi forward. So again, I don't actually dislike Luigi, guys. And is very much about Luigi finding his own personal bravery within himself. So it ties back into that wish he made in Super Mario RPG. But this is definitely like a lot of the people who worked at Square who developed Super Mario RPG would go on to, form the studio that would make the now defunct company that made the Mario and Luigi games. Those games mean a lot to me. I played the original on the Game Boy Advance when it came out. It's on the Nintendo Switch Online now, and I've messed around with it a little bit, and man, it still holds up. And it's so cool playing Mario RPG and seeing the originator of the stuff I love about this game I grew up playing and loving. And they also fixed the platforming stuff. They fixed the platforming stuff so much in Super Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
Yeah, that's, I don't know, perfect game, I think, that one.
Lovely. So we've talked a lot about how important this game is to you. What would you say the impact it made on you was beyond it getting you into RPGs as a form?
I think it set my expectations for RPGs a lot, but it also spoiled me in terms of having humor in my video games. I think it's really hard for me to take any game that's like super grimdark that seriously unless it has like some sort of cinematic notion behind it. The reason I like the Metal Gear series so much is because it's really goofy too. I tend to just overall be more attracted to any piece of media that has some modicum of comic relief in it. I always bring up this example wherein I love The Wire, but I could not get into Battlestar Galactica. And the reason being, The Wire actually has like moments of levity and comedic relief, and Battlestar Galactica has none of that. I know there's apples and oranges really, but like I don't think, Mario RPG single-handedly did this, but it definitely contributes to my preference for comic relief in serious things.
It does like add up to like your relationship with One Piece, which is something that does have a big sweeping epic sense, but it is also very light about stuff, and it does have humor in it throughout.
Completely. Yeah, Mario RPG made me want to play more games that had not just like RPGs, but RPGs that had like a little something extra, I guess.
Yeah.
I always think about timed hit mechanics in games and where they could be, and to the point where I will play an RPG and I will press the button as the impact happens just in case.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I've always played Pokemon, like the delusion that if I press
Oh.
A or like press the
Up
right
and
button at the
B?
right time, that this will be more effective. Exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But it's so fun when a game actually does do that. It's good. An impact this game made on me, excuse me, having now played this is like Iron Giant bullshit, but bear with me here. I love that this game is about fighting weapons. Like there is something like very interesting about the story being like weapons have arrived in the Mario universe. And it is such a foreign threat that no one really knows how to reckon with. And it is like more dangerous than Bowser. And Bowser has to team up with you to get rid of the core concept of weapons. It's like an RPG invaded a platforming world. And they're like, well, this isn't right. We got to get rid of this. And I love that. I just love the idea that like they just do not care for this shit at all and want it out of here as soon as possible. Like, this is too serious for us. Let's get it out of here. It adds an interesting fold to the story. And it also adds like this meta layer about this being sort of self-aware about being an RPG, but in a way that's still pure in the Mario sense. And that kind of really folds into like how like Mallow's like stakes and Geno's stakes and Bowser's stakes are all presented humorously, but also taken seriously. This thing isn't dismissive of anything. It like takes things as they are, but it is funny about it. And that's what I really like about this game. And it really made me appreciate the tone and the ideas that it had behind it. I think it's actually very smart a game, in addition to being goofy and pretty and brilliant and very well orchestrated.
That's well put.
So that's Super Mario RPG. Obviously, we didn't talk about everything Legend of the Seven Stars has to offer, but I do think that we really got to the emotional core, what makes this experience so great. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk about it, Alex.
Loved being here. Loved it.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. At the end of every episode, I like to have guests make recommendations for media. It doesn't have to be a game. It could be books, movies, television, whatever, that ties back into their love of the game that we just discussed. So what would you recommend to listeners based off of your love of Super Mario RPG?
Well, I have to recommend One Piece, of course. It's that really great blend of goofy seriousness. I think it's easier to read the manga than watch the anime. The manga is really easy to read. It's just shonenjump.com. It's like $2.99 a month for the entire back catalog. And yeah, it's like 1,000 chapters, but it's not going anywhere. Please read it. I think it's a really great story. I'd also like to recommend Bone, the comic. If anybody's
good.
Never read Bone before, Bone is, I think, probably my favorite American comic. Sort of like Carl Barks' Scrooge McDuck meets Lord of the Rings. It's such a great blend of cartoony fantasy. And as far as other manga goes, 20th Century Boys is really excellent. And I haven't played this game yet, but I heard Tomato Adventure is really good, and I believe it's been patched into English. It's another, I think it's an RPG. Somebody who worked on Mario RPG worked on this.
Yes.
And Star Trek Deep Space Nine is really good. I just watched it for the first time this past year, and it made me cry. Yeah. So I guess those are my media recommendations. If I could recommend a Twitter follow, Pidge0_1. This is a great Twitter follow if you like Mario RPG. They're a self-proclaimed Super Mario RPG librarian and a speedrun expert. Just a really great follow if you love Mario RPG.
Great shout there. Anything else before I give mine?
Go.
All right. So, 3 games and a set of movies, I guess. I'll start with the games. We've talked about these games before in the episode, but want to tie them back to Super Mario RPG. Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga is on the Nintendo Switch Online for the Game Boy Advance. If you haven't played that game yet and you enjoy Mario in RPG form, whether that's paper or Super Mario RPG, please check out this game. It is a direct spiritual successor. Yoko Shimomura also does the music for it. The people who worked on this game are in very direct roles in the creation of this game. So please check it out if you haven't. It's a very formative game for me, and I work my way backwards, but rest assured, it is a lovely game. Please check it out. If you love relatively short RPGs that feel dense and were also on the Super Nintendo, try Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger, again, one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. We'll never stop evangelizing it. It has very serious stakes and is very dramatic, but it is also light as a result of its character design and the presentation of its world. Akira Toriyama does the design for the characters in that, and it is such a moving and impactful piece of media for me. And it's also short. It's like 20 hours. It's only it's only a little bit longer than Super Mario RPG is, and it is also a very interesting cumulative work of 2D RPGs at the time. I also feel like Super Mario RPG is a culmination of a lot of stuff because it is definitely like Square being like, we want to break out into America, but they haven't made Final Fantasy VII yet. And it's just a very interesting part of the history of Square as a company and where Nintendo is at the time. And it is very much like a work that's like, here's something beautiful that they made before this relationship deteriorated forever, and is responding to the RPG trends at the time and something a little irreverent, but is also like a cumulative work that would also move Mario forward. Wanted to make that point before we moved on here. Thanks, Chrono Trigger. And I also want to recommend Alex's favorite game of all time, EarthBound, which is another Super Nintendo game that's funny, light, and Nintendo adjacent. Now, my recommendation for a movie is a bit sweaty, but Mario has this little villain called Bowser in it. And Bowser is very evocative of the kaiju creature Gamera, who was kind of a thing capitalizing on the Godzilla trend at the time. But there's a set of Gamera movies from the 90s that are really fucking incredible. And they're directed by Shusuke Kaneko. If you watch this trilogy of movies, it's just a very good dark take on this Gamera character, makes it transformative and has like really cool designs, really interesting human plot lines, and it's just like really good monster designs and effects. This is the trilogy is Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, followed by Gamera 2, Attack of Legion, followed by Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris. So please check out that trilogy. It's really good. I love the Godzilla films. Godzilla -1 was incredible. If you love that, check out Gamera Guardians of the Universe, that trilogy. It's definitely coming out around the same time as like Evangelion and stuff's coming out. So it's like a very 90s dark take on the monster genre, but it is very well made. And I tried to recommend it. I watched these last year and they're really good.
I think that set's available on Arrow Video.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen Guardian of the Universe. It's awesome. One other thing I wanted to bring up, if nobody's read it, the Mario comic that was serialized in Nintendo Power in the 90s has been collected into a single volume from Viz. The artist is Charlie Nozawa. It's a fun Mario adventure with a lot of humor, sort of based on Super Mario World, but Peach gets to do a lot as well. If you've never read it, I highly recommend it.
Great recommendation. That's going to do it for me today. Before I end the episode and let you go, please promote the hell out of yourself, Alex.
Will do. Please listen to the One Piece podcast after you've caught up with One Piece. We do a weekly manga recap where we recap what's happening in the manga. We do a anime recap. We do Q&A. Sometimes we do trivia. Come for One Piece. Stay for the Simpsons references, which we have aplenty. I also used to be on used to have a podcast called Toho Yaro, a Japanese film club podcast. It was me and two other friends, and we would watch a Japanese movie every 2 weeks, and we would talk about it. We have since stopped doing the podcast, but we did about 80 or so episodes. Please check out the backlog. I'm really proud of it, especially if you've like seen any of the movies that we've done. We've done like a heap load from the original Godzilla to Kamikaze Girls to Ikiru. We actually did do Gamera Guardian of the Universe. That was one of our last episodes that we did. And please check that out. And if you're on Blue Sky or Twitter or X, wherever it's called, I'm at dude ! All one word. I'm also on Blue Sky under that handle. And I also have a separate shitpost account called at Weeb Simpsons. It's basically Simpsons shitposts, but anime related or game related. I'm slowly putting all of the Twitter backlog onto Blue Sky, and then I'll probably do more updates at some point. So check those out as well.
Right on. Thank you again, Alex, for coming on. Please check out his work. Please follow him. Please listen to his podcast. He's been a part of. Wonderful guest who introduced me to a wonderful game. So thank you so much for that, Alex. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I'm your host, editor, and promoter, Kiefer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show, and your feedback will improve it. And if you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Twitter at SelectPodStart. If you have thoughts about Super Mario Galaxy, Legend of the Seven Stars, or any other games we've discussed, send
Super
a DM.
Mario RPG.
Sorry, what did I say?
Super Mario Galaxy.
Oh, shoot. If you have thoughts about Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, or any other games we discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support me on Patreon. If you pledge at least $1 a month, you'll get early access to new episodes as well as extended episodes with exclusive content. That's on patreon.com/Kiefer's Corner. You can find a link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is on the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more at moonshotpods.com. The art for the show is made by my best friend Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at Avery Robin Ott. That's AVRY Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the links in the description for both of their work as well as Alex's. All right, I think that's it. Well, we've won the battle. Now I hope we don't lose the war.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.